Hey, students, teachers, and parents. I'm going to sing you a song right now, and what I'd like you to do is tell me the next phrase that comes after that phrase that you hear. It's a very popular commercial, and because we've all heard it so many times, it just naturally makes us say the next part. So here we go. Ready? You don't have to raise your hand to say it, just go ahead and shout it out in class. And let's see who has the best memory of this commercial on TV. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. All right, by now most of you have said, I'm loving it, which is the next phrase on the MacDonald commercial. So as a teacher, if I can make you think of something else as soon as you say one thing, that's going to make you remembering math strategies a little bit easier. So I'm going to snap my fingers 3 times. Estimate, estimate, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Difference. Since those two words have the same amount of syllables, it's not enough to do a snap with your fingers or estimate, round it first. We sometimes have to do something else kinesthetically so that we can remember what the keywords want us to do in a problem. So the reason I'm showing this problem with you is several years ago in 4th grade, the students were given a problem, and in the question, it had those words, estimate, estimate, difference, difference. So when you hear those words, I want you to remember this. I'm going to put my hands out like this, like a teeter-totter, a seesaw. I'm going to say estimate. In other words, you're trying to take this number to a lower 10, this number here, that we don't know what it is, and put it to a lower 10 or a higher 10, a lower 100 or a higher 100. Estimate, 3 syllables. Then we can say the next part, round, made a little round circle, round it first. I used to say estimate, round it first, but guess which way most students would round? You got it, they would round up. So I have to make sure my students, as soon as they see those 3 magic syllables, estimate, their brain makes them go like this, estimate, and their body automatically says the next part with their hands, round it first. So round the numbers, and there's 2 ways that we're going to round today. That way we can see which answer might possibly be the one. Now in the real test, they're not going to have 2 answers, but I want to show you 2 different ways that you could get 2 different answers depending on how you try to estimate. Okay, difference, also 3 syllables. Difference, you subtract. And we learned in our last video that a line that's horizontal like this means subtract. If it also has a number on the top and the bottom, that means to divide. So since it's only the horizontal line, it means that we're going to subtract the numbers. So let's take a look and see a challenge question that I have in the 3rd grade test. I figured that your students would be able to handle it. But in 4th grade, several years ago, the students got a question like this, and they did not know what to do because not even half the students got it correct. Now, remember this. The problem has periods. the question has a question mark. And so that we don't get misled, sometimes it's better to read the question before we read the problem. What is the best estimate, round it first, of the difference you subtract between the total number of jacks and the number of marbles? Okay, so we're comparing the total number of jacks, so we'll bracket it in or underline it, and the total number of marbles that are inside a bag. So let's go look for that. Now I want you to notice here, it says the pictures only show what jacks and marbles look like, not how many there are. I should probably say this, in the bag. Okay, all right. Now, because there's no answer choice, a lot of students get very scared when it comes to open-ended or what we call grid responses, but there's no need. What I would recommend teachers is that at least on one test per week, one question per week, a couple questions per week, that you remove the answer choices and have your students practice the grid response to build their confidence. So if I only know those words, estimate, difference, I already know, round it first. I'm going to put RIF for short, round it first, and difference you subtract. And a lot of times my kids would ask me, do I have to write out the whole thing? No, as long as I know that you know that that means round it first and then subtract the numbers that you get, then we're good. So let's see how many marbles we have compared to how many jacks. It says there are 24 marbles and 36 pairs of jacks. So if you have a pair of shoes, you have 2 shoes. So did the question ask the total number of pairs? Let's check. No, it says the total number of jacks. That means we've got to take this 36, and because pairs come in twos, we would multiply it times 2 first, is one way to solve this. So let me show you the 2 ways that I would recommend that you solve it. 24 marbles, 36 pairs of jacks is 72 jacks. So one way is to say, okay, 24, round it first. 24 is closer to 20 than it is to 30. And so one way that you can do it is if you take a look at the number, okay, because 4 is not on the top of the mountain, we can say, okay, we're going to go to the first part of the mountain, 20, or to the next mountain, 30. Since 4 is right before the middle of the top of the mountain peak, 25, then if you were a car going up the mountain, then you would run out of gas and go backwards. And so 24 is closer to 20. That's the easy one. The pairs of jacks, 72, we do the same thing. Here's the 72, and then we look, we make the little mountain. Here's 70, round it first to the nearest 10. Where is 2 on this little mountain? 2 would be somewhere in here. So 72 is closer to 70 if we did it this way. And so then we have difference you subtract. And so one answer choice could be 50. There are 50 more jacks than there are marbles. The other way you could say, well, let's go ahead and take the 36 and round it to the nearest 10 first, because they could do that. And so 36, let's take a look at that. 36. Is it closer to 30 or to 40 doing the round the mountain way? Since 36 would be right over here, you have already passed the halfway mark, and I don't think we can go uphill if we run out of gas all the way back down. So 36 is closer to 40. And then because we said there's pairs, so it would be 40 times 2. If you wanted to do it that way, that there's 80 jacks if you rounded first. And so the difference you subtract in this case would be 80 total jacks rounded first minus the 20 that were rounded equals 60. So the answer that would be correct would probably be somewhere in between 50 and 60. And sometimes the answer choices are like that. It'll say between 50 and 60. And so we know that we would have to pick one of those ranges. And so if we choose the 50, then we put a 5 in the tens, a 0 in the ones, a decimal. I'm going to call that the highway of decimals, where we make the decimals in a straight line, and 50 and 0 tenths. Or we could also say if it's 80 minus 20, it could be 60 and 0 tenths. Okay, so and is a decimal. And so think of that as a little ball that you would bounce on the floor because the whole numbers are done. And pretend like this is the floor. We would say 60 and bouncing on the floor, 0 tenths. So using my mathematics chart, here, look, here's where it is. This would be laminated, but I didn't laminate this one. 70 minus 20 is 50 more jacks. That way you know what you're talking about. Or if you rounded first, the pairs of jacks, it would be 80 minus 20 equals 60 more jacks if you round before you do it. So either one of those is reasonable. So the answer that's correct is going to be somewhere in between 50 and 60. Let's find out what the actual answer is. We would have 72 total jacks minus 24. Let's take away 4 from 2 since we can't do that. Let's borrow 110. And 110 becomes 10 ones. So we're going to add the 10 ones. So 10 plus 2 is 12. 12, take away 4, or subtract 4 from 12. That would give you 8. 6 minus 2 is 4. So you have 48. So if you were having to double check this way, and you would say, well, okay, well, if I did this 3 different ways with the real number and then the estimated number, and where I rounded first, well, these 2 numbers are closer together. So if you were to pick one, I would recommend that you possibly pick 50, since the real number is closer to 50. Now that's just a suggestion on the real test. I hope that they would never do that to our students, but I will say that students apparently did not know what the words estimate, round it first, and difference, you subtract, meant. So try to think of little chants, little claps, things that you can do that once you hear a certain phrase, you automatically know the next one. So let me give you an example, boys and girls. Many of you have what we call CDs that have songs in them. If you listen to a CD often enough, when one song finishes, you sometimes know what the next song is going to be even before it starts playing, and you can sometimes even start singing it. Well, your brain basically records a video in its head. And so what I'm trying to help you do is to from now on think of that video in your brain, that as soon as you see the words estimate, your arms will go estimate, round it first, and difference, difference, you subtract. That way you don't have the same problem that the fourth graders had so many years ago. So God bless. Teachers, go ahead and share this video with, and let me double check, this was a fourth grade, so we'll call it a supporting standard for fourth grade and a readiness, sorry, supporting standard for fourth grade. So it could be readiness for third grade and supporting for fourth grade. It could be also be hard enough where we would have to, it might be a, I can't remember which one it was. It could be a supporting standard for fourth grade and readiness for fifth grade. So this problem could work for fourth graders and fifth graders most likely. So feel free to email me, teachers, if you have any questions. It's right there, writing_doctor@yahoo.com. If you're not a member of my math club, just enter those keywords, Come On Sense Math, and you'll be able to see all of the videos that we've done. We've all now finished all 10 questions from this third grade webinar. And I really suggest, since I've done them separately for you, that whenever you get to these TEKS during the year, that you show these problems to your students and allow them to practice them. Because if all we do is assign math, we're not really teaching it. We need to model and mentor strategies so that our students, like mine, will be able to remember forever things that we teach them in one day, not just forget from one day to the next. God bless you.